I was held involuntarily at a mental hospital for saying I didn't want to be pregnant anymore, Texas. A couple notes up front. I am a first-time mom, and this was a planned and wanted pregnancy. I am still trying to process the last 72 hours, which has caused me significant trauma and distress. I am writing this out publicly to warn other mothers. This happened in Texas. I am currently 9+1. I have been in the ER a couple times for severe 24/7 nausea, which is triggering significant panic attacks. The nausea is the worst at night and which has been keeping me from sleeping, which makes an anxiety worse, plus I'm unable to keep down food and liquids. It's been seriously horrible. My first 2 ER doctors, women, were at separate ER locations and both gave me hydration. One gave me Zofran plus sugar, but then I had issues with the Zofran backing me up. I had another bad night of puking and panic attacks, and I called my mom in the morning crying because I was so miserable. She said she would go to a different ER with me, one that was a full hospital that had OBs on staff. When I get there, I explained the situation to a male ER doctor who spoke with me for less than 5 minutes. I told him my issues with waking up with nausea, then the panic attacks, then sleeping. I told him that the panic attacks and combined with everything scare me and made me not want to be pregnant anymore, but I made it clear to him I just wanted relief and had no plan on hurting myself or anyone else. He refused to give me any medication, not even in 4-bag to help with fluids. He sent a social worker to talk to me about the panic attacks and said she could find a facility that would take me who could help with medication plus sleep, etc. I said okay because I was so desperate at that point and had been in the ER for hours with no help whatsoever. He never even called OB. I haven't seen mine yet at all. I haven't even had an ultrasound. I get sent to the new clinic and by the time I get through processing it's 3 a.m. and I'm crying because I'm having high anxiety and I haven't slept. They never gave me my nighttime medications or anything. I finally go to bed around 4 a.m. and then they wake me back up at 6 a.m. to do my vitals and said I needed to go itemize my belongings. Once I woke up, the nausea hit me immediately and I asked for Zofran, which they refused because I had to see the internal medicine doctor first. I didn't get Zofran until 10:30 am, at which point I had missed breakfast and was non-stop puking. But the doctor would only allow 1 4 milligrams pill every 12 hours. I was so sick. Eventually I'm seen by a psychiatrist who I thought would be able to help me with meds, but he said no, I can't take anything because I'm pregnant and I'd have to talk to a different doctor who wasn't going to be in until Monday. This was on Saturday. At that point I freak out because now I'm away from home. They aren't giving me my over-the-counter meds like Unisom plus B6 for nausea or my prenatals. And they're not giving me enough Zofran to keep the nausea at bay. I said I wanted to leave then, as I was there voluntarily, and the doctor was mad and said I'd have to sign an AMA form and he'd place me on a 24-hour hold, where the other doctor would talk to me before the 24 hours and determine if they'd try to get a court order to keep me. I was so shocked. I asked if there was any way I could talk to someone, as I didn't want to say, and they were holding me involuntarily at that point. He said no. I'm a panicky sick mess after this and go through all the paperwork they gave me, which included the patient bill of rights, which stated patients had the right to be discharged within 4 hours of request unless the doctor believed I was a danger to myself or others or that I was mentally unable to make medical decisions for myself. I requested a written justification from the doctor outlining which of those reasons he was using to justify the 24-hour hold, and he refused. He just kept saying I wasn't allowed to leave until I spoke with the other doctor, who wasn't going to be until the next day. At around 3:30 my mom and fiancé came for visitation and I brought my paperwork with me and showed them the patient rights documents, and they were pissed, so they stayed 2.5 hours after visitation and argued with them to release me so I could go home, since they weren't even treating me anyway and withholding medications. The doctor refused to talk to my family even though I specifically included them on my medical release forms. So they had a right to request that information and were requesting a justification for keeping me there past the 4 hours. It got so bad my mom even called the cops and filed a police report. They refused to let me go, so I had to stay another night without Zofran and couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't keep food or water down. There was no doctor on staff at the time, so when the nurses called to get my Zofran prescription increased, the doctor didn't answer and they couldn't do anything for me. I could tell the nurses were trying their best and were very frustrated for me. The original doctor came back an hour before the 24 hours were up and clearly did not want to talk to me. I think the other doctor said he wasn't getting involved because it was turning into a legal situation at that point. He was super short with me, and when I requested justification for the 24-hour hold, he said the ER doctor and said I didn't want to be pregnant anymore and used that as justification. I'm absolutely floored at this point. He didn't want to speak further about the issue and discharged me. But apparently no one knew how to discharge me because it's the weekend, so it took another few hours to even leave. The whole situation was so miserable and I legitimately feel traumatized by the experience. I still feel like I need help with the nausea and panic attacks, but I'm scared to go back to the ER now. It's been so horrible and I don't know what to do besides talk to my OB at my upcoming appointment and hope she's more understanding of my problems. I'm going to file complaints with the hospital and the state regarding what happened. I am also going to consult with a few lawyers to see if I have a case against them. This whole experience has left me feeling incredibly hopeless and frustrated with the medical system. I feel like I was punished for saying I didn't want to be pregnant anymore. As for me, I am currently staying at my mom's. I was able to finally get some rest and take enough Zofran and Unisom plus B6 to keep the puking at bay for a bit. I'm trying my best to keep my cool and avoid a panic attack. I appreciate any advice anyone could give on how to navigate this situation. Update. First, I'd like to say thank you to the outpouring of support. It really means a lot to me. I'm going to start with a very small update and then at the end I'm going to answer some questions / clear up some misconceptions about what happened. Update. I did see my new OBGYN and had my first ultrasound. My little guy is measuring right on time and had a heartbeat of 167. I feel overwhelmed with relief knowing he is safe in there and doing well. I explained the whole situation to my OB and she was incredibly understanding. She gave me a new prescription of Zofran and took some labs while I was there to check my electrolytes and probably some other things. I'll have another follow-up with her soon. At this point I feel comfortable enough working with her, so that's my current plan. As for complaints and legal stuff, there isn't much movement on that front due to the holiday, but I still have every intention to pursue those options and will try to update as I can. Now the other stuff. I did not expect that post to gain as much attention as it did. It was cross-posted many times and the responses were overwhelmingly sympathetic, but there was a ton of skepticism, especially from doctors who read it. But hey, it's the internet, so that's to be expected, I guess. At the end of the day, I don't need any strangers online to believe what happened to me, because I have recourse in real life and that's ultimately what matters. I was accused of changing my story, but I think that was mainly from people who skimmed my posts, so below I'm going to clear up some things and provide some additional details, not because I have to but because I think if there's going to be discourse about my experience, I wanted to start from a place of accuracy of timeline and events. Starting with, at no point was the court involved with the decision-making process. I went to the ER willingly. They made it seem like they were not equipped to help my situation and that the other facility would be able to help me with my sleeping and panic attacks. I was so run down by the time the social worker came to my room that I'd have agreed to go anywhere they said would provide me with relief. I went to the new facility voluntarily of my own free will. There was number 72-hour hold. When I mentioned 72 hours in my last post, I meant that the whole situation from going to the ER to leaving the new facility took place over 72 hours. Once I got to the new facility and met with the doctors, I realized that I was not in the right place to get the care I personally needed. I was away from my support system, not being given the proper medication to control my vomiting, my anxiety was significantly heightened, and I not being given any additional treatment or resources, so to me there was no point in me being at the facility, and it was indeed making my situation undoubtedly worse. After speaking with the on-call psychiatrist, he told me that he thought the ER doctor misled me, and that I'd need to sign an AMA form which would place me on a 24-hour hold. It was clear he did not want to be the one to discharge me and insisted I needed to speak with the attending. He mentioned the possibility of a court order but said it was unlikely they'd get one for my case. After that conversation, I went to review the paperwork they gave me during admission. I found the patient bill of rights which stated that for voluntary patients, they had a right to be released within 4 hours of their request. Unless 1. I changed my mind and wanted to stay. 2. I was under the age of 16 and my guardian didn't want to release me. Or 3. If the doctor has reason to believe that I might meet the criteria for court-ordered services or emergency detention because, 1. I'm likely to cause serious harm to myself. 2. I'm likely to cause serious harm to others. Or 3. My condition will continue to deteriorate and I am unable to make informed decisions as to whether or not stay for treatment. After I read that, I bought the papers to the nurses and requested a justification from the psychiatrist for the 24-hour hold. I wanted to know which reasons he was using. The psychiatrist did not provide reason or justification beyond the attending needed to evaluate me. That's it. To be clear, this is illegal. They had zero reason to keep me past the 4 hours. At no time had I indicated I was a threat to myself or others. Not verbally, or written on any of the questionnaires that I had filled out during admissions. The attending not working that day is not a legal justification to hold me. Their schedule does not supersede my rights as a patient. Now, after the 24 hours was up, the original on-call doctor came back to discharge me. He was clearly agitated that the attending refused to come in to do the discharge, so I never at any point spoke with the attending who was originally assigned to me. The on-call doctor did not seek a court order to detain me. The conversation lasted about 10 minutes or less. When I asked again for the justification to keep me, he asked me if I said anything to the ER doctor about wanting to end my pregnancy, and I told him I just said I didn't want to be pregnant because I was so miserable. I then tried to ask if he believed that was enough justification for the hold, but he cut me off. It was clear he didn't want to engage in any further conversation. My concern here was the implications of legally being allowed to involuntarily commit any woman who said she didn't want to be pregnant anymore, which seems insane to me. But I digress. To answer questions about the facility. Why didn't I just leave? Because this was locked facility. I couldn't just get up and walk out of the door. How were they able to take me so fast? This facility has been open only for 10 months. They had beds and empty rooms available when I was there. Questions about my ER visits. I had 3 separate visits which took place over 4 weeks. The first ER I went to was a stand-alone clinic not associated with a larger hospital. The doctor there said next time to go to a ER attached to a hospital with LND. So the next time I went to an ER, I went to an ER hospital that I mistakenly thought was a full hospital, but it was a hybrid and they did not have LND. The third ER was attached to a full hospital. I was not doctor shopping, I'm just not familiar with the hospital systems here. Regarding my comments about ultrasounds and OBs. I never requested an ultrasound during any of my visits to the ER. I mentioned the ultrasound in the original post just to state I hadn't had one yet and hadn't been evaluated by an OB yet. My mother has a history of missed miscarriages, so in my head I thought it could be a possibility, and if I was being denied medication for being pregnant, I was just hoping I did have a viable pregnancy. But again, I didn't request an ultrasound. Concerns regarding DIY abortion. I am not and have never considered a DIY abortion. I am lucky enough to have all the resources I would need to fly anywhere in the world to get appropriate medical care if I had decided to go that route. Both my fiancé and I work high-paying remote tech jobs, and in the worst case we could move out of state tomorrow if I absolutely needed to. Obviously this isn't an ideal route, but it is an option that is still on the table, even if it's just to get care in a better medical system outside the state of Texas. Medications I'm currently taking: 10 mg busoprone 2x a day, 50 mg Zoloft, Zofran, Unisom plus B6, prenatals, no benzos. So to cut through all the BS, whether you agree or not with the doctor's course of actions, I hope most people can see that the facility was not the right place for me to be. They were not well equipped to handle my pregnancy symptoms, they were clearly understaffed, and they were not providing me with any additional treatment that I wasn't getting at home. There was no reason for me to be there. It made things in my case significantly worse, and I hope maybe if anything people can just learn from my experience. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for their support and for the DMs I received. I'm also so sorry for all the other similar stories I've read. It seems like there's a bigger issue happening here, and I hope others can eventually find peace too. I am going to continue to work diligently with my OB, psychiatrist, and hopefully a therapist so I can really unpack this entire situation. As I said before, I'll try to update as I can, but I'm sure the complaint and legal process will be slow moving. I'd also like to ask if you know any attorneys in the DFW area who may be interested in this case. Please feel free to shoot me a private DM with their information so I can follow up. I will also try to answer any additional questions in the comments, in case there's anything else I'm forgetting. Obligatory, sorry for the terrible formatting, I'm on mobile.